Hey guys, welcome back to Rocket Gyan, my fellow space tubers. How are you? And I am very excited for this launch, but I had to say, oh man, this was a very short notice for me. I just got to know like in 40 or 45 minutes or so about this launch. I knew that this launch was coming, but about 45 minutes or so, I got to know that this was confirmed. Otherwise, it was slipped to March 31st, and now everything I had to do in a very um, you know I had to hastily do everything for this launch. So pardon me if I go wrong with the research and everything, but I have done my very best in this short notice to present you with this launch, the Astra Rocket 3.3 launch. And um, talking about this launch, man, this company itself is very much in radar right now. First of all, this company has the most number of Russian investors. Second of all, the first stage of this rocket comes from Ukraine, manufactured and comes from Ukraine. Second of all, sorry, third of all, I mean, uh, the first stage, they have right now only two first stages in their factory, and this is the out of those two stages, this is the one stage which they will be testing. Okay, so without any further ado, let's just have a look at the rocket itself. How are you all? How are you all? Hi Joel Sajan, I have a Discord server. You will get the link spammed in the chat, so don't worry about it. Okay, so here we have the first stage. Let's just know, and pardon me if you feel that everything is being um, hurriedly covered, but that's how it is. So this is the Astra Rocket 3.3. This is this is powered by 5 Delphin engines, which you can see here, and these Delphin engines runs on electric pump fed cycle as well as RP1 and LOX as its fuel. So it's a semi cryogenic engine, no solid fuel, and that too 5 of them. The second stage is the you can say the pressure fed engine, which runs on which is an ether engine, is a pressure fed engine and also has RP1 and LOX as its fuel. So this is how the thing look like in terms of rocket. And this right now has the payload capacity of around 25 to 50 kilograms or so, and right now it is in testing phase. Once it is done with that, they will try to improve the launch capacity. Okay, so this is how it looks like. This is what the rocket is. And yes, the previous launch was very what should I say, adventurous, and but it did not result into good result basically. So yeah, it resulted into a failure. So now they are returning to flight, and I don't know how they will conquer this Ukraine issue, because they have this, first of all, Russian investor as well as Ukraine first stage coming in from, basically this rocket first stage coming in from Ukraine. So yeah, this is all about the rocket. Now let's have a look at the payloads right now. Okay, so yes, hi everyone. Hi, I'm flying the bug. Thanks for streaming. Yes, it was at a very short notice, I must say that. 40 minutes only, and I had to prepare everything. Now let's have a look at the first of all, this one. This today they will be launching in from Kodiak, Alaska Island here, which is like, you people think that this USA and Russia are like very far apart here. Okay, so like here is USA and here is Russia, and they are like two corners of the earth. But that is not the case. If you are in Alaska, and if you are at the this farthest corner of this Alaska or whatever USA island is this, USA corner or USA coast is this, you will just have like 80 kilometers or so to reach Russia, because the earth is round and you don't have to go like this, but you can go, I mean, like this from here and then come from here. So Russia and US are like very close to each other than they are portrayed or than they are assumed to. So yes, Kodiak, Alaska is very close to Russia, I can say that. But today they are going to sun synchronous orbit, and hence launching from polar Alaska, because northern pole, near to northern pole, and easier to launch it to northern um, uh, polar orbit basically. So they have two launch sites, Kodiak, Alaska, and Cape Canaveral, Florida. The first launch from the Cape Canaveral, Florida, which happened in the previous month, I guess, resulted into a failure. We'll talk about that too. So right now they only have like 50 kilograms to synchronous orbit, but they are trying to improve that to 500 kilograms, which we'll see. Okay, now this is about the company. Now have a look. Let's have a look at the payload. So this is the payload we are having. This is a ORSAT-0. That's what they call it, and this is a, you can say, open source satellite, because here this satellite is going to and this is like they you can see here written flight heritage test of this satellite. So this satellite ORSAT is an open source satellite, and in this mission they will be testing the flight heritage, which means, as they say, it's a fancy way of saying, hey, our satellite doesn't catch fire when it flies in space, which means they will be testing each and everything related to a satellite. Okay, the telemetry, if it is holding up or not, the attitude control system, the guidance and navigations, and power system, communication, everything. So you can see here ORSAT 0 will demonstrate the critical functionality of the ORSAT system, including solar boards, battery card, onboard computer, generating radio and telemetry system, over the airframe and software updates, turnstile antenna deployer, and more. So yes, they have this antenna which will be deployed. This is like, you can see it's not in deployed position right now. These antennas, these 4 antennas will spread, and yeah, like this, I guess. It's not in the image, but you get to right? And since it's an open source system, so therefore everything here, you can see everything is given, what all subsystems have they used, and that would be amazing to see, right? And this is an ORSAT 0, this which will just test the hardware of the satellite, whether it is working or not. And after that, the ORSAT 1 satellite will come into picture, which is actually a NASA student funded satellite, and it has the actual mission of doing some science. So we'll see that, but yeah, this was pretty much about this ORSAT 0 satellite, which is the primary customer. The other thing which they will be testing for this mission is this S4 crossover, and this is a very interesting thing, because the goal of the S4 crossover is to obtain the flight heritage testing for a prototype payload host platform. So this is the thing which you are seeing in front of you is not a satellite, but it's a platform which will be attached to the second stage and will not be deployed, which will be attached to the second stage of the rocket and not be deployed, and will become a host to various experiments and satellite testing and whatnot. So the features that will be testing will include a Globalstar transmitter and an Iridium transceiver, as well as space environmental instruments to characterize the radiation and plasma densities to which the payloads will be exposed. So this is again a flight heritage mission, which they will be testing everything working fine or not. But in future mission, this S4 crossover, which you can see in front of you, will host various experiments with it. So it won't be deployed in space like any other satellite do. So yes, it is going to be launched today, and these are the two things which will be launching today, which, yeah, let's hope this mission is successful. And now let's have a look at their thing which we need to know, means the launch characteristics. So this will be, they have like 2 days launch window, 14 March as well as 15 March, which you can see it will be launched from Pacific Spaceport. Here you can see pad LP3B, which means Kodiak, Alaska, and then they have 97 degrees inclination in which they will be going to, and 525 kilometer altitude. This is the target orbit, which means it is going to a sun synchronous orbit, and 525 kilometers altitude. So yes, this is about it. We have already talked about the payloads, ORSAT 0 and S4 crossover mission, and then this is the mission timeline, which you can see. The liftoff and the pitch over will begin at 6 seconds. Max Q will be attained at 1 minute 10 seconds. And then all the events have followed. MECO, the fairing sep, stage separation, upper stage ignition, second stage cutoff, and the payload deployment. And previously in the previous mission, we saw what happened during the events, and fairing separation was the main thing, which after which the acronym for this rocket, which I have given, then the naughty rocket, which I love to call it, started its shenanigans, and it wasn't able to fully complete its mission. So yeah, that's pretty much about it, and I've already talked about rocket itself. So yes, the first stage powered by 5 Delphin engines. Thrust per engine is 6,500 pounds. And LOX and kerosene is its fee. Whoa, that was as fast as I can go with covering the missions and everything. Okay, we are still waiting for them to come live. I guess everything. Let me just see if we are still on for the specified time today. This again, I reiterating the fact, guys. This was at a very small notice for me, and very short notice, and I have to prepare everything in just 40 minutes or so. So I may have not done proper research, but I tried to do present my very best. So pardon me if I was unable to provide you with full information, but that's not how I operate. So yes, you have got almost everything which you needed to know about this mission. Small things here and there might not be told, but yeah. So yes, still on for the mission right now, and there is no delay, so we'll have to wait and see. Waiting. Okay, let's what's going on in the chat. So hi everyone. When ISRO imports engines from Ukraine. No, that is not the case, Joel Sajan. I know what you are talking about. We'll discuss about that, but right now, oops, okay, I didn't even change the image. What the hell? Okay. Really sorry. Let me just repeat myself once. I'm really sorry. I didn't change the screen in front of you. So, okay. Let me just repeat it once again. Yeah. Okay, we talked about this. So yeah, the ORSAT-0 satellite which I was talking about. I hope it is visible now. I'm really sorry for that thing which happened, but yeah. Okay, so yeah, I was talking about the ORSAT-0 satellite. So this satellite is the open source one, which you can see in front of you. Now you can see the actual image and what antenna I was talking about. This was the antenna which I was talking about. These 4 antennas which are deployed in sequence, but right now it is in retraction form. So they will be testing the flight heritage, as I said, which means testing all the subsystems in the place so that the satellite itself survives, and then you can host the science experiments and other things on it, right? So ORSAT-0 will demonstrate critical functionality of the ORSAT system, including solar boards, which you can see here. Solar boards, battery card, onboard computer, engineering radio and telemetry system over the air, firmware and software updates. So you can see lots of cards inside the satellite. Obviously, they are just testing everything right now, and these cards will be replaced by the okay experiments. But yeah, the star tracker card, which you can see here's the camera is also there, lens sort of, which is useful for alignment in space, because there is no orientation in space, right? There is no up, there is no down if you are floating in space, right? So there you need to have some sort of reference, and there comes the star tracker. Mostly they what should I say, track one of the brightest star on the visible in the system, but I don't know actually the name. But sometimes they also track the sun, but rarely they track the sun as a star tracker, because sun, you don't actually get to have the sun with your orbit every time. With sun synchronous orbit you get that, but yeah. So this is the S4 crossover mission, which will host the payloads. You can see here. So this will not be deployed, and will just host the payloads. And then this is going to 97.5 degrees nation file. All cute. And yes, in the previous mission also they had the prop. Okay, so I guess we'll discuss about that. So I guess we are live now, so I'll switch over to that. Just guys.
Yikes. You bet. Concur. We don't need any more of these.
Okay, we are live now. Yay.
Good morning and welcome everybody. You are looking at a live view of launch vehicle 0009 out on the launch pad in Kodiak Island, Alaska. The Astra teams are just about T-minus 42 minutes away from conducting a launch attempt with the goal of launching multiple payloads for Spaceflight Incorporated. We are coming to you live today from Astra's headquarters in Alameda, California. My name is Thomas Burkhardt, News Director for NASA Spaceflight, and I'm joined once again by Carolina Grossman, Director of Product Management at Astra. Carolina, how are you doing today?
Good. Ready for a launch attempt, Thomas?
Me too. It's a great day for a launch. Thank you all for tuning in today. Astra and NASA Spaceflight are once again partnering to bring you this live coverage, so thank you to Astra for helping make this happen. Also, over the course of today's broadcast, as usual, we'll be taking a bunch of questions over the course of the countdown and the launch. So if you have a question about today's mission or the launch, please tag us at NASA Spaceflight in chat. We'll be reading through those and pulling as many of them as we can and trying to answer them. Let's start off with a quick status update on today's launch attempt. We see the rocket out on the pad and the clock under 42 minutes to go. So Carolina, what are the teams working on now, and what's the status of today's launch attempt?
Sure. The team is moving through the countdown steps smoothly and not tracking any technical issues at this time. As you can see from that frosty white middle third of the rocket, propellant has been loaded onto the vehicle. We are closely monitoring the weather this morning, in particular triggered lightning. So we will keep you posted as we hear any updates, but we are keeping a close eye on the weather and no other issues this morning.
Should weather choose to, or kind of come up to be a problem at any event or any technical issues come up, they do have a little bit of a launch window to work with today. Can you tell us a little bit about what the constraints are today?
That's right. We do have a 27-minute launch window this morning, which extends to 9:49 a.m. Pacific time, 16:49 UTC. It's a short window this morning based on our mission, which has a specific local time of the descending node, or LTDN, and that specifies our short 27-minute launch window this morning.
And the payloads being deployed into that orbit, there's a few of them, for all managed by Spaceflight Incorporated, the launch services manager. Multiple payloads, including customers Portland State Aerospace Society and NearSpace Launch, going to a sun-synchronous orbit. That orbit is inclined 97.5 degrees, so this is more or less a polar orbit, hence the launch from Kodiak, Alaska, and also going to an altitude of about 525 kilometers. And this is actually the first launch of Astra with Spaceflight Incorporated, part of a multi-launch agreement, right, Carolina?
That's right. You can see Spaceflight Astra-1 is our mission name. It's our first launch with Spaceflight, a premier launch services provider, and we are very excited to be working with Spaceflight on this mission and future missions.
The Spaceflight team joined the Astra team here at the headquarters in California to take a look at the payload deployment testing and things like that, and we actually have a quick video to show about the Spaceflight and Astra partnership.
Wow, okay, so yeah, things moved very quickly here.
Astra and Spaceflight have in common is that we're trying to get multiple different types of satellites into space that will benefit the Earth.
So the core business and the mission of Spaceflight is really to open up access to space to areas that were previously underserved or have sort of unique needs.
Spaceflight has a unique ability of aggregating various satellites into a single launch. And Astra has the ability to take multiple different types of satellites that
So
have
guys, yes, you are actually seeing this launch, and I am very amazed that they are going forward with the launch. And because this is the company which is actually very much affected by the things going in Russia and Ukraine, reiterating the fact that the first stage of this rocket comes from Ukraine. So it is actually built in Ukraine and then shipped to US. So that's a big problem for them. And right now they are just have like two first stages in the factory ready to go, but I don't know what the future holds for them. And second of all, the Russians have a good amount of money in Astra. They are like the most Russian investors that I have ever seen, rocket company for US. So I
And
don't know
I'm now joined
how
by
that
Amanda
works now.
Durkheim, Senior Manager for First Stage Production at Astra. Amanda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you.
So, got a couple questions for you. I want to talk about your role here at Astra. As the production manager, what are your responsibilities here at Astra?
So just like any role here at Astra, it's certainly very multifaceted, but I do like to break it down into three main areas, and that is the people, the build, and the factory itself. So being a manager here at Astra, I'm first and foremost a people leader. And so a lot of time is spent just connecting with the individuals, working on development goals, making sure that they're challenged in a right way that really energizes them. That's really going to be the way that we are successful in our mission, is to make sure that we really have empowered team members who are building and working on our rockets. And then there's the vehicle build. So the first stage production team currently has around 20 team members who weld, drill, rivet, integrate, and test, take the vehicle from engineering drawing to reality. And as a production manager, it's not only my responsibility to understand the overall bill of materials, but also what design changes are coming through from engineering, and figuring out how those changes are going to make their way onto all the vehicles that are currently on the production line, since at any given time, we might have multiple vehicles on our line. And with that comes such an important need to document everything that we're doing. So working extensively with our quality and manufacturing engineering teams to make sure all of the photos are taken of everything that we're doing, that our notes are really extensive. That way we can take a snapshot in time of what work has been performed on the vehicle, so we can go back later and assess kind of where we were with the build process. And then lastly, it's also the coordination of all of those efforts. We have really tight build schedules and really tight launch operations that we have to make sure the vehicle is ready for. And then also the factory is that last responsibility. So here at Astra, we actually treat our factory as a product. So with the production managers as one of the main customers for that product. And so there's a lot of time is spent with working with the product managers to make sure we've really well documented like what's going well with our processes, or where are the gaps? Like where do we have room for opportunity in order to really make our production process a lot more efficient.
That's great.
And when you're talking about first stage production, what does that entail? We're looking at a view of the rocket here.
Please,
How much
please
of
tell
that
us.
falls under your jurisdiction, basically?
Right. So actually, everything that you see visually on the rocket is the first stage. Once you load the upper stage onto the vehicle, then it becomes the rocket assembly. So I can step through the various components. So from aft end to forward end, which for those not familiar with that terminology, the aft end would be the bottom of the screen. Forward end is the top of the screen. So at the aft end, we have our 5 main first stage engines. And surrounding those are thermal protection, just to make sure all the engine controllers are protected during the high heat environment during the initial ignition. Moving up, we have the fuel and liquid oxygen tanks. And so the fuel is obviously closest to the engine bay, with the liquid oxygen tank sitting just above it. That's where we have the nice frosty look from the cryogenic fluid in there. At either end of the tanks, we have valves, sensors, just to make sure everything is well regulated and monitored during flight. And then those are also connected by a raceway that goes down the length of the vehicle. And in there are primary harnesses as well as plumbing lines. Moving forward to the aft end, there's also the interstage. That's the conical white section that has the Astra star and the flag on it. So that's where a lot of our avionics are housed. And it's also the primary means of holding on to the upper stage during flight. And then once main engine cutoff happens and after the fairing separation, the interstage is what releases the upper stage. And then lastly, at the forward end, those are the 2 fairings. And so my team has 2 main sub-teams underneath it, the integration and the structures team. So the structures team is led by Kirsten Saunders, and so her team basically takes a lot of raw materials, and from either the machine shop or from outside vendors, and they will form all of the metallic structures that you see. So they'll form the fuel and liquid oxygen tanks. They do the primary structures for the inner stage as well as the fairings. And then Aaron Burnham is the leader on the integration team, and so his team actually takes the different components from the other production teams here at Astra. So he'll grab the engine bay from the engine team, the upper stage, and all the avionics components, and he'll actually integrate the overall first stage assembly. And then he'll integrate the upper stage with the vehicle as well, do all of the final checkouts, and to make sure that the vehicle is going to operate as expected during flight. We'll also load up the vehicle onto the strongback, which is that large metallic structure that you see up to the left. And then we'll load all of that into a box and send it on its way. So essentially the first stage is a lot of what you see here. So it's a pretty wide, pretty broad area of involvement on the production floor here. And it's essentially the vehicle that gets the upper stage high enough to take over the flight and deliver customer payload to orbit.
All right. And then producing that stage here at Astra, how does that differ from the way other spaceflight companies or other launch providers handle their production?
Sure. So here at Astra, we're working to really change the way rockets are thought of across the industry. Our main engineering focus for vehicle production is not really on chasing the next big design that's going to disrupt the industry, but really looking at iterative innovations that really enable mass production of these rockets at volume in order to lower the cost and make space as accessible as possible for everyone. So it really comes down to design, materials, and processes. So for design, it's fundamentally important to design for manufacturing, and part of that is to include the manufacturing and production team as early in the process as possible. So my build technicians are encouraged to provide feedback to the engineering team of they are building on the floor, and if something can be done a little bit better or if a part can be refined a little bit, they'll provide that feedback to the engineering team, and that'll be incorporated into the design, particularly on those production processes that really enable us to scale to production levels that are unprecedented in the industry. And materials, so we're not working with exotic materials that are difficult to come by or take a long time to manufacture. Over 95% of our bill of materials contains non-single source, easy to manufacture materials that are equally as easy to use and form on the factory floor. And that said too, the processes are that third item. And so we're really using tried and true forming and joining processes that are standard in the aerospace, marine, or even automotive industries. So it's about really optimization, how we utilize our engineering and manufacturing resources and looking at simple scales. The production process is about taking a sophisticated design and really breaking it down into smaller, more manageable build operations that are reliable and repeatable. And really it comes down to hiring the right talent also to really own those key production areas.
And for that key talent, that's such a crucial part of your team, what kind of backgrounds and skill sets are you looking for when you expand your team?
Sure, that's an excellent question, since we are constantly hiring here at Astra. This past year, we held several really successful hiring events, and upcoming in 2022, we'll definitely be holding more of those events where we hire build technicians, engineering development technicians, and even red team members. It's actually a fairly common development path for our technicians to cycle onto red team, since they're the ones who have a lot of the experience working with the vehicle here on the production floor that can easily be translated to the launch site.
Right.
And so above all else, when I'm hiring, really looking for a great cultural fit into our organization.
Okay.
Our team works really hard here, but they also take really good care of each other. And we truly appreciate a wide variety of technical skills. Really, anyone who has automotive experience or the marine industry or even aircraft mechanics have the right skill set to be able to build our rockets. On the structures team, any metal forming, welding, riveting are really strong qualities that we look for in our technicians. And for the integration team, a little bit more sophisticated there, definitely a good understanding of plumbing lines and safety of pressurization around equipment, and a basic familiarity with instrumentation, electrical harnesses,
Cool.
and just general comfort navigating software systems.
But the main thing is that she didn't answer the question how much is actually produced here. The first stage is produced here, and how much is produced in Ukraine, and basically how much Astra is dependent on Ukraine. Well, that needs to be seen with their launch cadence.
And asked the right questions or found the right persons to really help guide them through the process and to be successful. And if they weren't successful, what did they learn from it, and how did they adjust their processes moving forward? Really just looking for someone who's just as passionate about building rockets as we are here. I love that just minutes after the LV0009 launch, one of my technicians texted me, and he was just blown away by the magnitude of what we achieved and his part in it. That cool. he thanked me for hiring him, and so that's that's the passion that I love to see on our team here.
That's awesome. I do actually have one more question for you, and it's because I think you have another story to show. The team tells me that there was an interesting moment recently around the birth of your baby girl.
Yes. So I guess to back up a little bit, I did find out that I was expecting the day before I started at Astra.
Okay.
And so I was joining a very, very fast-paced startup since this was before we went public last year. So I was drudging through those really slow first months of pregnancy while facing this type of environment, which is a challenge in of itself. Fast forward a few months, and we were a few days away from shipping LV0007. And I was with my team on the production floor finishing up the aft end of the rocket when my water broke. And it was 6 weeks early, too, so totally unexpected. But it was fantastic to see my team jump into action. I felt like all of them were ready to drive me to the hospital right then and there. Thankfully, it didn't come to that, but it was my little one was born a few days later. It's a very exciting time on the production floor here.
Oh, there you go.
There she is. That's little AJ wearing her little astronaut onesie. But yeah, we just like to joke that since she was my little sidekick during the build of LV0006 and LV0007, that she was just too excited to join the world. And so it was really great that she wasn't supposed to be out yet, but we were able to watch the launch as a family.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
Amanda, thank you so much for joining me today and answering the questions. Love to talk to you about this kind of stuff. It's very cool.
Yeah.
Again, if you are watching and you have questions about today's launch, we're starting to get those in, and we're going to start going through those. Again, tag us at NASA Spaceflight. In the meantime, we're going to go back to our pad views and listen into the countdown net for some activity. It's currently at T-minus 27 minutes and counting. Stay tuned.
Okay, so looks like everything is going as per the plan, but right now things are looking great. Although the previous launch was a failure, and we actually have a good, good information basically on how it failed and all. So basically, what happened was obviously that fairing did not open. Okay, so that is one thing. So they actually caught two things. Fairing was one of those, and the other thing was that the thrust vector control of the second stage was not working. Yes, and that's the reason why it went tumbling. And on being asked whether that tumbling could have been forced into the rocket because of the fairing blast which it did, he said it might be, the spokesperson said, but the main thing is that the second stage ether engine thrust vector control, which is responsible for gimbaling the rocket or steering the rocket, was not working. That was one of the issues which they found out after that launch, and obviously the fairing did not open, and the reason for that was also mentioned that they had something related to. Let me just open up the detailed analysis for you so that I can take. Just wait a second. Yeah, so the main reason is the separation mechanism. Our fairing has 5 of those were fired in an incorrect order, which resulted in an off nominal movement
and
of
welcome
the
back to our
fairing
coverage
head
again. T-minus 25 minutes and counting.
Electrical disconnection. Due to the disconnection, the last separation mechanism never received its command to open, which prevented the fairing from separating completely before the upper stage ignition. So this was the thing, and because of that, okay,
sure. So we do have a very short launch window today. The chances of the triggered lightning causing a violation are relatively high this morning, so we are keeping a close eye on that. We would only be able to hold or recycle within our launch window this morning, which again is very short due to the mission requirements for the local time of the descending node, or LTDN. So we're keeping an eye on that. I've seen a lot of questions as well around rain and other factors. Our team takes into account the weather, many different weather factors, but rain is not something that particularly impacts the rocket on the ground, although it does make work a little tougher for our red team, our team of field engineers who is up in Kodiak, and we are very grateful for them working in those conditions to help keep our launch site set up on time and safe.
You mentioned triggered lightning as the main criteria that everyone is looking at. On these camera views, we're seeing some rain come in and out. Is that a factor for today's launch?
We're not tracking any other issues this morning aside from that triggered lightning concern. So the rain that you may see starting and stopping is not an issue.
Gotcha. And a question from Tim here. How does Astra monitor these different weather conditions? Are there weather balloons, sounding rockets, or satellite data, stuff like that?
Right, we do use a number of sources of weather data, but the most real-time source of data that we get is from weather balloons that are deployed at predetermined points throughout our countdown. Our team receives the input from those weather balloons, and we are able to adjust the trajectory in real time and use the most up-to-the-minute information about weather to ensure that LV0009 has a safe trip to orbit.
That's
All right.
great.
Again, keep the questions coming, and we will keep you updated on the status of the weather criteria as the countdown continues.
Okay, guys, they are, mentioning this triggered lightning scenario, right? And you must be wondering what this triggered lightning is. As the name suggests, yes, triggered lightning does means that the lightning could be triggered, and yes, the rockets can trigger lightning. We were discussing about this triggered lightning concept in the previous live stream, which I did, and um, quite thankfully, it is actually happening today. Means, it can happen today. So let me just explain you this. Triggered lightning. So this triggered lightning can happen because of the plume coming out of the rocket. Those plume can be radioactive, and at the time of combustion, because of the plasma and all, so those ions can cause the lightning to occur in the clouds, and because of that, obviously you don't want a lightning to happen when the rocket is passing through the clouds. So yes, that is what is triggered lightning is, and that's what they are looking for right now.
And the other issue is a software problem that resulted in the upper stage engine being unable to use its thrust vector control system, which was ultimately due to an issue with packet loss. So both of these issues our team was able to work very thoroughly to identify. On the fairing harness, we were able to fix that incorrect engineering harness drawing and incorporate that change throughout our system. And we also implemented a new end-of-the-line signal test to help us mitigate this issue prior to launch. And then on the software side, we made several updates to make our system more resilient to packet loss and other similar failure modes. But this is, again, part of our approach of iteration, testing, eliminating failures as we find them, and we've overall made our system much more robust. These are part of our core values here at Astra and part of our culture, and we're very grateful for all of the hard work done by our engineering teams, as well as by the FAA for working with us through the investigation process.
It is definitely notable how quickly it has been turned around from that failure to returning to flight. Definitely something that is not normal in the aerospace industry, to be honest. Keeping the questions coming, got some questions about the Astra rocket. Which combustion cycle is used on the Rocket 3 engine? Well, there's two different types of engines, so you want to run through them both?
Sure, that's right. We have two engines on LV0009. We have the 5 first stage engines known as the Delphin engines, are electric pump fed engines. Each of our first stage engines produces 6,500 pounds of thrust. And there we have a great exploded view of the Astra rocket. The upper stage engine is known internally as the Ether engine. It is a pressure-fed engine. There's only one of them on the upper stage, producing 740 pounds of thrust. And both engines use liquid oxygen, or LOX, and RPX, which is essentially kind of a mineral spirit, a highly refined form of kerosene. We use the same propellants for both engines.
And keeping the questions coming, let's see. Is there onboard video, or do you have a good data relay coverage for this launch? I believe we should expect some onboard camera views, and there you have it. This view is on the first stage of the rocket, looking up towards the upper stage, and the payloads mounted on top. And then we've got a view on the upper stage looking back down towards the first stage, so you can just see the outline of the second stage engine bell there and the top of the inner stage section. So hoping those views will stay online as well during the course of today's launch. Also, if we weren't sitting on a pad encompassed by condensing air around a very cold rocket, you would see the outside of the rocket looking down the side there. Once the rocket is actually in flight, that view will probably become a little bit more clear, but that should be a great view as well. And again, that depends on, how healthy the radio signals during the launch is. Sometimes they can cut out here and there, but we will hope that those camera views stay with us because they are definitely very cool views. Speaking of camera views, we have a question here in chat that we are obligated to answer every single stream. What are the two black towers for at the launch pad?
Yep.
Well,
as of Roadster, yes, it was done according to the plans, but yes, they actually, had to go towards the engineering diagram of the rocket, the fairing basically, and make changes there only. It was a fundamental thing which they were having wrong. So yeah, now everything is as per the plan. And talking about the packet loss thing for the second stage, well, that is related to the computer networks or so, or basically telemetry, in which one packet, or you can say one command which you send or not send, basically the thrust vector control is all onboard computer, right? And when you are actually sending the commands from the computer to the engine to operate as per the data, the packet can be lost because of various factors, but major factor for packet loss in space is radiation. So sometimes radiation can cause things to happen, and that's why they need to harden the, I think they have done that only, the harden the computers and have some backup data computers on too.
Are very proud of the ability to launch quickly, learn quickly, and iterate. So we launched just a little over a month ago was the LV0008 mission. And now we are back here on the pad with LV0009, a different launch site in Kodiak. So we are able to show that we're able to launch about once a month at this point. And part of what makes our system so unique and flexible is that much of what you see here on your screen actually fits inside standard size shipping containers. So the rocket fits in a standard 45-foot shipping container. The strong back, that black sort of ladder-like structure you can see retracted back from the vehicle fits as well. And all of our ground support equipment does fit in standard shipping and logistics options, which allows us to very, very quickly set up, respond to issues, and be ready to fly again, as we've demonstrated following the LV0008 mission.
I also have a question here from Jonah talking about the payloads on today's flight,
so
asking since today's payload will not be separated from the fairing, how many of those systems resulting from LV8 be tested on this vehicle? To be clear, first and foremost, only one of the payloads on today's mission is not being deployed. There is the S4 crossover payload from NearSpace launch. That is a hosted payload that'll stay on the upper stage and operate from there for a couple weeks. But the other payloads on board today's mission will be deployed like normal satellites, including the Portland State Aerospace Society's ORSAT 0 payload, in addition to other non-disclosed payloads at this time. So, but resulting from that, I mean, any systems that are different or not going to be tested on today's flight because of that hosted payload?
That system, the hosted payload, is entirely self-powered, so we expect everything to proceed as normal. We've completed our standard battery of tests on these vehicles. And we've just received a notice that we are holding the clock at T-minus 15 minutes for weather.
Okay, so
like we mentioned earlier, triggered lightning criteria has been being watched over the course of today's countdown. The window extends 29 minutes, so a little bit of a window to work with. The countdown could lead to a T0 as late as 9:51 a.m. Pacific time. And we'll stay tuned on updates as the teams look at their weather data and determine if a launch attempt is viable today. But again, in a hold at just about T-minus 15 minutes due to weather. We'll keep you updated as more info comes in.
Okay, so
Meanwhile, we can
yeah.
keep taking some questions while we wait for further updates. A question from J Trains asks, where is the payload going today?
That is a wonderful question. So our payloads are going to a sun-synchronous orbit. We're going to an inclination of 97.5 degrees and 525 kilometer altitude for the Spaceflight Astra-1 mission today.
And that kind of mission profile dictates the launch site you're going to, right? Because this is one of 2 launch sites that Astra currently has active, and Kodiak lends itself to those high inclination, those polar orbits.
Yes, that's exactly right. So one of the great advantages of working with Kodiak and launching out of Kodiak is the easy access to those polar and sun-synchronous orbits. So I want to just take a moment to shout out to our partners, the Alaska Aerospace Corporation, the Pacific Spaceport Complex Alaska, and everyone in Kodiak that has welcomed us and been wonderful to work with over the last several years of Astra's launches.
That's great. So what is the payload? As they answered the let me just okay.
We have a few payloads, but we will talk about and highlight 2 of them. One is the NearSpace Launch S4 crossover, which is actually not being deployed. It will stay on the upper stage. It's a technology demonstration mission for a type of payload host platform. And what this payload will test supporting future payloads and has a lot of environmental instruments to help characterize radiation and plasma density. As we mentioned, it is self-powered and operates completely independently of the Astra system, and it will remain permanently attached starting from when the system turns on after second stage engine cutoff, or SECO. And the other payload we'll highlight is the Portland State Aerospace Society's ORSAT-0, which is a fully open source CubeSat satellite system, which was built from scratch by students at Portland State University. It is slated to be Oregon's first satellite, and it's a 1U CubeSat that provides flight heritage for a modular, expandable, open source, and education-friendly ORSAT bus, and paving the way for a future 2U CubeSat with a global climate science and STEM outreach mission. So those are 2 of the payloads on board today that we are very excited to highlight. And again, this is our first mission with Spaceflight, the launch services provider. We are very excited to be working with them on this Spaceflight Astra-1 mission.
And looking forward to future missions as well, part of a multi-launch agreement between Spaceflight and Astra. Spaceflight, a very prevalent commercial mission manager for many different launch vehicles, now including Astra's Rocket 3. Do have a fun question here from Musical Wolves. Will ask, will there be pie if today's launch succeeds? It is Pi Day, so...
It is Pi Day. I certainly hope so. It is an early morning that the teams have spent here preparing for today's launch attempt. And so I can hope that we will celebrate with pie.
Sounds good to me. Again, if you are just joining us, we are at T-minus 15 minutes and holding due to weather criteria. The teams are looking at weather data and determining if there could be an attempt today. The launch window extends until 9:51 a.m. Pacific time or 16:51 UTC. So we have a little bit of time for the teams to work this issue. No technical issues being worked. The vehicle is in great shape.
That is great to hear. So yes, talking about the orbital height, well, it is going at around 525 kilometer polar orbit or sun synchronous orbit. Okay, so it is going to that height, and an inclination to be specific is 97 degrees. And talking about the payload, let me just give you some more information about the payload. So there are like 2 major one, the S4 crossover and the ORSAT-0 satellite. So as for crossover and the ORSAT-0, they both are basically those satellites which are testing their flight hardwares. Okay, or you can say the flight heritage, in which they will be testing all the subsystems that are there in the satellite, which are required to, basically run a satellite, without which the satellite won't run. The onboard computer, the power, the telemetry, and all those things. the S4 crossover as well as the ORSAT 0. They will be doing that. And the ORSAT 0 is basically an open source satellite. So yes, that satellite is open source, and ORSAT 1 will be the actual satellite funded by NASA, in which they will have like actual payloads on it, the scientific payloads. So they are testing that, and other than that, they just said that they have those secret payloads also, which we don't know. So we should be looking forward to that. Maybe some NASA payloads, or the the defense payload, because the Space Force actually funded this one. So maybe you may see some defense payloads in it. And yes, one more thing to add, that the S4 crossover is not deploying, because S4 crossover is a platform in which it will be attached to the second stage, and it will provide the power, the power, the telemetry, and all the subsystems which are required to host a experiment into space. That is being done by S4 crossover. And the ORSAT 0, that will be deployed, and then the antennas will open up. So that is how the things look like.
The launch pad that Astra uses is actually at the very southern tip of Cape Canaveral, and you get a great view from there. So stay tuned for future launches by Astra down there, because honestly, it's probably one of the best launch pad views you can get because of that pad at the southern tip. So stay tuned for future launches, and definitely some great viewing locations.
Exactly.
Right Tudor
now,
asking about
we are at hold because of the weather, and specifically the triggered lightning condition, which can basically, that means the rockets can trigger lightning, and you don't want lightning to be triggered by your vehicle itself when you are going to space. So yeah,
what we've done to mitigate it. But for those of you who are just joining us now, the fairing issue was the fairing did not separate nominally during the LV0008 flight due to an error in an engineering drawing that caused the separation mechanism to fire in the incorrect order of the fairing. So what we've done about that issue is we fixed the drawing, of course. We implemented the fix on the hardware that we have already built, and we added a new test that we have completed for LV0009 that will allow us to identify this type of failure in the future prior to launch. So we can report that issue has been resolved and mitigated for the future.
cool. And launch window is of 2 hours. Now, Alex, the launch window is just about 27 minutes or so. So yeah, you don't have to wait for a long time. So we'll have to. Yeah.
Where can folks watching at home maybe get involved with some Astra merchandise?
Well, we're very happy to share that we have opened the Astra Shop. The Astra Shop is now live at shop.astra.com, and we are also especially excited to share that for the next 2 weeks, we will be donating 100% of the profits to charities offering humanitarian services in Ukraine right now. So visit shop.astra.com, and you can see what we have available. We have a pretty small selection right now, like we always like to do. We like to learn and iterate. So
rapid store iteration, I like.
Yeah, so we'll learn the kind of products that all of you folks who have been supporting Astra and watching at home are interested in purchasing, and we'll expand our selection from there. And again, 100% of the profits for the next 2 weeks will go to humanitarian efforts in Ukraine, including the Red Cross, World Central Kitchen, and UNICEF.
That's very cool that you're doing that, and a big thank you to Astra for their support in that endeavor. And go check out the Astra shop. It's pretty cool.
Whoa,
we get that
that's
question
great.
every stream, and now we finally have that answer for it, which is pretty cool.
Very exciting. Thank you so much to our
When
team
are they
here at
launching? Well, we are at hold because of the weather right now, because of the triggered lightning, as they say, and the launch window is just of 27 minutes, so you don't have to wait for a long.
Asking about that tank structure that we talked about earlier with the liquid oxygen on top and the RPX kerosene on the bottom. Is there a reason for that particular order?
Oh man.
Well, we can. I think that's just how the system was designed.
No, maybe we'll get back to you on that. We'll have to wait and see. But
Okay, let me
that
answer that question for you guys.
it's harder to see because both the fuel and the oxidizer are both chilled, so you can't actually tell which tank is which. But on the Astra rocket, it's nice and visible.
Yes, and we do again use the same propellants on both stages, which is another
Right.
way.
Okay,
we keep
guys,
our
let me
design
just answer
really,
that
really
question
simple,
for her.
to help scale
Let me
our-
just
our
give into
system and
we
operate
discuss
it.
this thing so much in
Again,
on
if
our
you are
channel
just
that
joining us, the
all
clock is
of my
still holding at 2
subscribers
by
and all
15
of
minutes. We're
my
standing by to hear
viewers
the relevant
already
weather
know the
criteria
answer
for
for that
today.
question, why the
Whether it
oxidizer
has
is
frost level,
above
no
and
technical issues being worked with, you should find it
the
right here
fuel
in
is
the
at the
technical
bottom. We
section
have
of today's
discussed it so
countdown.
many times,
Let's go
and let me
ahead
just
and
tell you
listen in and take a
the
deep
reason
breath and watch
also.
as we will
So
wait for more information on
basically,
that. Again,
you
make sure that
want
is
your rocket to be bottom heavy, right? And for a rocket to be bottom heavy, that means you need to have as much weight as possible in the bottom of your rocket. And the density of the RP1 is more than the oxidizer, and that is the reason why it is kept at the bottom, which means since the density is more, you can see the frosty part is actually larger than the that part, the non-frosty part, which means the non-frosty part will deplete in a very much slower than the oxidizer, and because of that, much of the weight will be concentrated at the bottom, and which will make the rocket more stable. If you have played KSP, you know the rockets need to be bottom heavy, because then only it can become stable. Otherwise, if it is top heavy, then you can see, if a thing is top heavy, that means it will tend to topple when it is going towards the atmosphere, in the atmosphere, through the atmosphere. Because just imagine something which is top heavy, which means bulk of the weight is at the top, and then you just push it from the top. What will happen? It will topple down, right? Just give it a little push from the top, it will topple down. But if that is the weight is there at the bottom, now just imagine what will happen. You will try to push it from the bottom, but nothing will happen, because of the engines are also there, which can compensate as well. As that's how the rocket becomes stable for the aerodynamic configuration. So I guess that answers your question. And guys, this is what we do on this channel. We get into all of the technicalities of the rockets, the space, the subsystems of the satellite and whatnot, the science basically. So if you are new to this side, this channel, just hit that like button and subscribe for all the launches, because on this channel we do all the launches and I cover all of them, so that you never miss a launch, as well as you get to know everything about a launch which is happening. So this is the channel for everything you need. Okay, you want it to be bottom heavy, that makes for a poor stability. Nope, bottom heavy is more stable, top heavy is not stable. I don't know, done PS, but as far as I know, I can say that the rockets needs to be bottom heavy, and many of you will agree also. If you have played KSP, you will also agree with me. Simple aerodynamics and simple things in place. Right now, scrub is in the cards right now, but let's be hopeful, because we never know with the Astra. This is the naughtiest rocket which they have. So we don't know. So yeah, as I was saying, please guys, if you want to go into technicalities, please, or just enjoy the launch, the views and the imageries, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to support me, please do that. It really helps me by becoming a member or a Patreon. Link is down in the description, and super chat is enabled for one-time funding. Oh yeah. Okay, so we had did we I didn't see the fox. I didn't see the fox. Maybe it was there, but I didn't see the fox. Will you continue with the countdown? Yes, they will continue with the countdown when the hold is lifted up. Right now we are at hold because of the weather conditions. There is some sort of triggered lightning which could happen. Let me just explain you this triggered lightning also. So the rockets can actually trigger a lightning. This is the concept which we were discussing the previous live stream. So things just happen. Whatever we discuss is specifically for this live stream is being discussed here, is being talked about here. So this triggered lightning can happen because of when a rocket, zoom passes through the clouds, the plume has the ions in it, okay, and those ions are radioactive, so basically active, and those ions can trigger a lightning because then.
So if you are just joining us, we're
Okay.
still holding a T-minus 15 minutes due to a weather criteria. You notice the countdown is pretty quiet. The teams are still waiting for some weather data to confirm whether or not the launch attempt can proceed for today. I guess the launch window extends until 9:51 a.m. Pacific time or 16:51 UTC, and that means that we should get a decision one way or another within the next 15 minutes or so. So we're going to keep you updated on that, and as soon as they have that data and make that decision, we'll of course share that with you. But we do have some more questions coming in, and one is pertaining to the weather situation, actually asking what is the triggered lightning criteria that the teams are looking into today?
Yeah, that's a great question. So triggered lightning is a phenomenon where as the rocket moves through the atmosphere and encounters electrically charged fields in the atmosphere, it can act as a giant lightning rod and can cause lightning to strike the vehicle and potentially damage it and risk the mission. So unfortunately, it's not something that we have a lot of control over,
Right.
just like the rest of the weather. But it is a pretty unique phenomenon, and that's what we are keeping track of today.
Dude, it's a dream come true for me because whatever we are discussing is actually being discussed in the live stream.
From Apollo 12, I believe. I hope I got
Yeah.
that mission right. Oh god, my Apollo history isn't the best. But that was actually a lightning strike that occurred during launch and caused all sorts of electrical issues. So those weather criteria are developed over years and years of launch experience and apply to all the rockets that are launched from
Exactly.
various launch ranges around the world. So again, the teams are looking into that triggered lightning criteria and will let us know as soon as they make a decision one way or the other. Still holding and holding out for a launch attempt today. If things do end up not going that way today and we need to target a new launch attempt, when is the next launch window, Carolina?
So we do have another launch window tomorrow at the same time. So that is 1622 to 1651 UTC or 922 to 951 AM Pacific time. So we do have another launch opportunity at the same time tomorrow. It is still that same shortened window due to the requirements of this mission. The payload's heading to an orbit with a specific local time of the descending node, or LTDN, which is dictating our short launch window for this vehicle.
That's
Looking at
great.
this launch pad,
So,
we've got
as I was saying, this triggered lightning, let me just complete my saying whatever I was saying. So, triggered lightning means a rocket can trigger, and the rocket can act as an electrical rod, which is kind of, not exactly how that works, but let me just tell you. The lightning occurs because there is a distribution of charges on the clouds, right? The ions are, I think the clouds are positively charged or the ground is negatively charged, and when that charge separation is actually very large, then the lightning occurs. I think that is the case, or maybe the charges are reversed, but the charges should be there for the lightning to occur. And when the plume when the rocket expels the plume, it has ions because in combustion chamber the fuel is reacting and creating ions, and because of that those ions can actually charge the nearby those clouds, and that can cause the lightning. This is how the triggered lightning works. And this is the trajectory of this rocket, which you can see in front
keep
of
out zone, which I believe is those blue areas, one very close to the pad and one further away, as well as the rocket trajectory should fall right down the middle between those two red lines right there. So that is the path that LV0009 will take out over the Pacific Ocean towards orbit.
And talking about the mission profile and the payloads on board, SV asks, what is the mission profile for today's flight?
Sure. So we are heading to a target orbit of a 97.5 degree inclination and an altitude of 525 kilometers for the LV0009 flight, the Spaceflight Astra-1 mission. It's our first mission with Spaceflight as a launch services provider. We are very excited to be working with today.
And the payloads on board, there are 3 different customers for Spaceflight Incorporated on today's flight, one of which will not be deployed, the NearSpace Launch S4 crossover payload that we talked a little bit about earlier, a hosted payload on the upper stage of the rocket. There is also a CubeSat for the Portland State Aerospace Society, or SAT-0 is one of the payloads that will be deployed from today's mission. Or assuming today, if the weather cooperates, again, if you're just joining us, still waiting on some weather data, and in under 10 minutes we'll have a decision one way or the other whether the countdown can proceed, looking at the triggered lightning criteria that's affecting the countdown right now. Might have some new viewers to the Astra program. Astra's still a pretty new launch provider in the
Okay,
industry.
so we
and,
still
this is a
have
pretty
some
small
time,
rocket.
like
It's a
10 minutes or
dedicated
so,
rocket for small satellites.
until
So
this,
the payload is
until we
actually
get a
about 12
confirmation
meters
of the
long.
launch today.
Yes, that's a great question. So the rocket you're seeing here is 43 feet long from tip to tail, with a diameter of 52 inches, and that 43 feet is significant because that means that our fully integrated vehicle can fit inside a 45-foot shipping container, making our system very, very flexible and portable.
And another question regarding Astra's launch systems. Does the rocket have a name other than LV0009? So there's a couple names we've thrown out there. LV0009, there's Rocket 3, Rocket 3.3. What are all those different naming conventions talking about?
Sure. So LV0009 stands for Launch Vehicle 0009. That's the tail number of the vehicle, like the tail number of an aircraft or the VIN number of your car. It's this specific version or this specific vehicle of the overall model, which is Rocket 3.3. And so Rocket 3.3 means that it was an iteration of our Rocket 3 series. So that is kind of like similar to like a software release. You know, if you have your iPhone, you might have iOS, version 15.1 or 15.3, and that's a similar approach that we take because it's so important to us to iterate, make changes, and learn, just as we've done between the LV0008 and 0009 missions. So those are some of the naming conventions that we use. So LV0009 is an Astra Rocket 3.3.
Cool.
Yeah, so basically there are multiple Rocket 3.3s. That's a model number that can be built
So
many
in
times
under
again.
7 minutes or so, we'll get a confirmation whether we are going in for the launch or not today. And if they don't, we have a backup launch window tomorrow.
Not flying east, is that unusual? It is unusual for some missions. A lot of missions do tend to fly east from their respective launch sites because that helps you take advantage of the spin of the Earth. It actually makes it easier to reach orbit. However, for this particular mission, that would not be helpful because these payloads are going to a sun-synchronous orbit. They are intended to go to orbits that orbit kind of over the poles. It's a 97.5 degree inclination, which means that the angle between the orbit and the equator is 97.5 degrees. And in order to do that, obviously you can't fly east because then you won't be flying over the poles. You'll be flying over the middle of the planet. That's also why when launching from Kodiak, Alaska, which is up closer to the poles, it's actually better for these kind of missions. You have all that room south of the launch site to fly south towards a polar orbit, and also you have less spin from the Earth, start with your basically starting velocity at your launch site, which means it's easier to reach those orbits. Earlier, the LV0008 mission was targeting a more mid-inclination orbit, which is why they launched from Cape Canaveral, Florida, which is closer to the equator and has all the ocean east of the launch site, so you can launch in that direction. So it totally depends on the mission. It's a case-by-case basis, and the sun-synchronous orbits are also a very common orbit for especially small satellites to launch into.
I presume the
So
slight
it's not that
westward
uncommon
direction
at
of the
all. Depends on
launch
the
is to
mission.
provide the solar sync. Yes, the solar synchronous is what they are aiming
Samer
for
has a
today.
question. How many stages are there on the
97.9 degrees to be precise.
This is a two-stage vehicle. We have the first stage, which is powered by 5 first-stage engines that are electric pump-fed engines with 6,500 pounds of thrust. And the second stage has a single pressure-fed engine, which produces 740 pounds of thrust. We have that lovely expanded view of the system. So starting from the left, you can see those engines in the engine bay. Then we have those first stage cylindrical tanks. We have the cone-shaped interstage, and then we have the upper stage, which kind of has two spherical tanks, kind of looks like a sideways snowman, and that upper stage engine, and finally the two halves of the fairing, and that is LV0009
Fred.
that you are seeing on the launch
Nope.
pad today.
And Timothy has a question. What will happen to the payload that is not being deployed today once the launch happens? How will it eventually be destroyed?
Great question. So we expect that payload, that is the NearSpace Launch S4 crossover, which will remain permanently attached to the Astra second stage. Transmission will begin right after second stage engine cutoff, or SECO, and it will operate until its demise, which is expected a few weeks after launch. So it will remain attached to the upper stage and operate for several weeks.
Yes,
And that's all about just natural
that is what they are looking for. But yes, to answer your question, Fred, they do empty the tanks. Obviously, that happens, but nobody goes inside the tanks with a scrubber to scrub the tanks. If you meant that, things are looking okay right now. I won't say good because we still have a weather condition right now, and we are waiting for that. I'm still hopeful, but let's see what happens.
About 3 minutes here, we're expecting a decision one way or the other because, again, at 15 minutes to go in the countdown, the window extending till 9:51 a.m. Pacific time, 16:51 UTC. It is coming up on the deadline to make a decision one way or the other. Should it be a no-go, there is a backup launch opportunity tomorrow, but we're standing by for official word on today's attempt. Still holding out hope that the team will be able to make a go towards the end of today's window, but we'll keep you updated as soon as we have more information.
Exactly. In just 3 minutes or so, you will get to know. And talking about these satellites, there are, as they say, 3 customers are there, but one of that is not being disclosed. So I assume that is from Space Force, because part of this rocket is being funded by Space Force. I mean, the development of this rocket. So Space Force or Defense, I don't remember exactly, but yes, can say. Now, the second payload is from the ORSAT, which is the open source satellite CubeSat, basically, which will be testing the flight hardware, the battery, the onboard computer, solar panels, and all. And the other one is the S4 crossover, which is the host of the science experiments and all those, which basically will not detach from the second stage. It has its own power, it has its own telemetry, and all those things. So anything, if you have some experiment which you want to go into space, you can just host in the S4 crossover payload, and things would look great. But right now, what has happened? It's not from my side. Nope. Not from my side. Okay, good. So talking about the fuel corrosive, yes. See, oxidizer is highly corrosive. Oxidizer is highly corrosive, and that's the reason why some of the when you have an option to cool down your engines with another fuel, you always choose that. And in case of hydrolox engines, there the cool down of the engines before the combustion happens is done by hydrogen, and one of the main reason is this only, that the oxidizer is highly corrosive and you don't want that to be flowing inside the engines, and that's why you try to cool those things down with then hydrogen instead of oxygen. So yeah, to answer your question, yes, indeed they are. So now they should have started the countdown. So
This is Astra flight on countdown. Astra is scrubbing for the day due to triggered lightning not improving for the rest of the launch window.
There you go. Okay.
And as you just heard, the flight director for today's flight, Chris Hoffman, has called a scrub for today due to the triggered lightning criteria not cooperating for today's window. Ran out of time, unfortunately. There is another backup launch opportunity tomorrow, same time. The window opens at 9:22 a.m. Pacific Time, 16:22 UTC, from Kodiak, Alaska, hoping that LV0009 can get off the pad tomorrow. Hope you'll come back and join us for that coverage. Carolina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Thomas. Hopefully we'll get it off tomorrow.
Hopefully. I hope you'll come back for that. Stay tuned for future space news coverage here on NASA Spaceflight. Thank you all so much for watching. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Okay, we will be here. Don't worry, guys. I'm still here. We'll talk about some things which we need to talk about. So, look. Okay. Yeah, Astra. Okay, so this is the update right now. Scrubby doo. No, yes, indeed that happened. But guys, if you are new to this launch business or the launch viewer, if you are a new launch viewer, rocket launch viewer, precise, let me make you familiar that the rocket launches are bound to be scrubbed, not bound, but they can be scrubbed, or they can basically get a hold for quite a long time. So this is very, very, very common in rocket launch industry. So if you are into this, so be ready to bear that. Yes. So due to weather, now targeting tomorrow, March 15 at 9:20 a.m. pick. So they I think has the same, almost same launch window. So that's why you will see at least tomorrow I'll be better equipped with all my information, as well as technicalities, as well as the things which I need to share with you before the launch. Today, unfortunately, I got a very short notice that only like 40 minutes or so before I got to know that there's a launch today, because I knew that Astra was aiming for the launch today, but there was no confirmation as such. And uh, in many of the apps, the launch even moved to 31st of March. And I thought then, okay, that means it is not happening today. But fortunately, I actually got to know like 40 minutes or so before, and yeah, it was there. But tomorrow I'll be better equipped with the things, particularly the failure which happened in the previous mission. We'll talk about that. And yeah, um too much lightning it seems like, but tomorrow at about the same time, short window, because it needs to sun synchronous. Weather looks clear for tomorrow, according to the predictions. That is great to hear. Yes, the sun synchronous kind of thing is the reason why you have a very short launch window. But uh, we will you will see me tomorrow also, so join me for tomorrow for uh, a better launch coverage, as well as, on this channel you get the best launch coverage, I must say that. But it will be better from today, and you will get to see the launch hopefully tomorrow. And I am very much interested about the future of this Astra company, because they are supplying parts from Ukraine. That to the first stage is, what I have heard is that most of the first stage is produced in Ukraine, and now the things are not good in Ukraine. We all know. So what is the future of Astra? Like, thankfully for Atlas 5, when these things happen, Tori Bruno was very smart, and he actually procured all the Atlas 5 engines which were remaining to be flown for the Atlas 5 rocket before it retires. And now every rocket engine is available at ULA factory, but that is not the case for the Astra. And they they only have like two of the first stages present in the factory right now, and one of those will be used tomorrow. And I don't know what will happen then, so we'll have to wait and see. One more thing which needs to be noticed and needs to be told, that most of the investor, I mean not the most, but uh, you can say majority of the Russians investors are here in Astra. They are investing in Astra, and now I don't know what is the situation with investment in US from Russia. I don't know with all the sanctions and all those things, but um, this company has been the actually the hit majorly from this crisis which is happening. I must say that. So there are quite a lot of things which has happened today in ISRO. If you are a ISRO fan, ISRO successfully carried out the ground testing of the newly developed solid booster stage for its new launch vehicle, small satellite launch vehicle, at Satish Dhawan Space Center, which you can see. This is the static fire test which they did of their new launch vehicle, the SSLV. And if you don't know about this launch vehicle, well, this is the small satellite launch vehicle, and this is a game changer. I must say that. Because why is it a game changer? Is this because it's a revolutionary rocket which can be assembled in just 72 hours and requires only 6 people to launch, as well as it is the cheapest small sat launcher which can launch the payloads from any country. So this is a very revolutionary rocket because it's an on-demand rocket, can be assembled in 72 hours and require just 6 people to launch. That's it. And it is the cheapest of all. It is around like $4 million per launch. That's it. $4 million, which is the cheapest. In contrast, the Electron has like $7 million per launch. Astra is supposed to be very much cheaper, but right now I don't know what is the future for Astra, as well as the payload capacity for Astra is just 50 kilograms right now. So um, can't say anything about that, but yeah. So, and the launch, the maiden launch of the SSLV is expected in the next month. So yes, that is the case. Right now, there was a scrub due to the unacceptable weather condition. How many $1 million per launch for this Astra is? It's around $2.5 million per launch, but again, it can carry around 50 kilograms. I don't know whether this figure will remain as it is if when they will increase their payload capacity to 500 kilograms or so. I don't know about that, but SSLV is just $4 million, and the payload capacity is also 500 kilograms and synchronous, which is great. A lot of few Russian speakers about compared to the last launch. Maybe they're getting to those look at the rockets. It's actually very sad. I must say that. You know, war is not war is not beneficial for anyone. Today we are living in a situation where we are living in a world of globalization, right? And if any of the country backs out, there is a huge crisis all over the world. And because of this war situation and all, you know how the gas prices are. But one thing which people are actually not noticing right now but will notice very soon is the wheat crisis. Wheat is a major what do you say, um, ingredient for producing various type of breads. And if you are not self sufficient in producing wheat and rely on importing the wheat, your country relies on importing the wheat, then a wheat crisis is coming very soon. And talking about things, even the space sector is not you know away from all this situation. We know what is happening in the Soyuz launch vehicle. It is like has banned the OneWeb launches. Now OneWeb will not be launching from the Soyuz, and now OneWeb is actually hanging now. Where to launch? Only options which they have right now is the SpaceX as well as the ISRO's PSLV launch vehicle. Let me tell you that OneWeb has already signed a contract well before this thing happened with the ISRO only to launch the OneWeb satellites from PSLV as well as GSLV Mark III. So they already have the contracts in place, but those were the letter of intents, and those things were not bound, not bound. Those contracts were not bound, which means they can happen or they may not happen. So those are the things. And other than that, there's a huge crisis of medium launch vehicle in all over the world, because right now we only had the Soyuz launch vehicle as the medium launch vehicle, which was launching regularly. uh, Specifically, Arianespace is actually actually being impacted a lot. They have lost their sole launch vehicle, which they were launching a lot. Their Vega upper stage is being in Arianespace has Vega rocket, the Soyuz rocket, and the Ariane 5 rocket. The Vega is another launch vehicle which they would have launched now frequently after the Soyuz has backed out. But the problem with the Vega is that the upper stage, the topmost stage of the Vega is actually has some parts from Ukraine or Russia. I don't remember exactly, but it has some parts from there, and um, so there's a problem with that too. And talking about US, well, Russia has declined to. Russia has now said basically that they will not supply any of the engines to US now. And as I said, Dory was very smart. He looked at this day and he has actually procured every engine which is required for the Atlas 5 remaining flights. So that would not be a problem for Atlas. And but the problem is uh, that all the Russian engineers have also returned home, and they will not be coming to US now. So any technical difficulty now, ULA has to manage that. But Tutori has already said that is not a problem. They have the experience and expertise now in launching the RD-180 engine, so that won't be a problem. So yeah, we are living in a strange world. The Astra has been impacted a lot. I must say that Astra is the only company which I can see which has been impacted a lot. We'll have to wait and see how the things would look like with the because as its parts coming in from Ukraine, specifically the first stage. Now they don't have any other option but to produce everything in house, not in house but in US now. So we'll have to wait and see how the things would look like. It's a very big blow for them, I must say that. Okay. Thank you so much for joining in, guys. Yes, we are also having an Artemis 1 rollout coming very soon. I guess it's on 17th of March, which is great because I am very much excited to finally see a moon rocket. Man, we are returning back to the moon. We are returning back to the moon. It would be so great to finally see humans on the moon, but this time to stay and even go further. As and all, it would be very great to see all that. And thank you all for joining in. I really appreciate you for tuning in, guys. I hope I was, uh, you know, good for the commentary today. And if you liked my commentary, please hit that like button. It really helps me, as well as subscribe for future launches. In particular, tomorrow's one is the Astra's one. And if you want to support me, please do that. It would really help me by becoming a member, and a Patreon link is down in the description. Okay, guys, I think that should sum it up. Um, we'll be again meeting tomorrow at around the same time only. So thank you all for tuning in. Until then, this is Pian Shiroila. You just saw Rocket Gyan. Stay safe, stay healthy, and bye bye.